All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Azul Study Sessions video. Um, Today we are going to review some games from nhass, and I actually recorded this video last night, but somehow the recording got stuck showing um, only one screen, so we're going to do it again, and hopefully that means it'll be a better video um, because I have seen the games that we're going to review, and I also am going to slightly change the way that I do these study sessions, but I'll get to that in a minute. So first things first is if you're not aware of nhass, which you very well may not be, nhass is a German player who showed up in May of last year and quickly climbed to over 1,000 ELO with a 96% win rate, and then disappeared. So hasn't played in almost 2 months. And at first I thought, well, surely this is somebody's second account. Like, this can't be a new player. But if you look at nhass's playing profile, it's pretty unique. And there's a few of these like metrics that I'll focus on, but number of turns is 26. Number of points gained from columns is below 7. So that means that nhass averages less than one column per game. And then number of rounds as the first player is 1.5. So these numbers may not mean much to you, but let's compare them to the other 1,000 ELO players. So here's Cien Azul, aka Queen Dong. So number of turns over 27, over 7 points gained with columns, so averages more than one column per game, which is a weird way to say that, but it basically gets one column every game and sometimes gets 2 columns, is basically the way to think about it. And the number of rounds as first player, 2.6. So on average, Queen Dong will be the first player in one more round than nhass, basically. Here is Saprolot. Again, number of turns over 27, points gained from complete columns over 7, and number of rounds as first player over 2. And Phosphate, who is the third player who has been over 1,000, number of turns above 27, more than 7 points from columns, and number of rounds as first player, 2.65, so the highest. So the numbers are like relatively close, but with the exception of the number of rounds as the first player. But I think what this says about nhass's style is that he's a little more focused on I guess like getting his opponent's negatives as opposed to building, but like clearly he's not finishing his column as often. And you may ask, like, what's the benefit of not having the first player tile? Well, the benefit is that your opponent is taking a negative. So nhass uses that to add on additional negatives. And then this number of turns thing, you might be saying like, oh, what's that about? And hopefully we'll see some examples of this, but basically, like, imagine if you're going first and you take from a factory, of course, and then your opponent takes from the middle, and then you take from the middle, and then your opponent takes from the middle. Like, you've each played some number of turns, 2 in that case. You've each played 2 turns. And so the more that people take from the middle, basically the longer the round is. And so what nhass does is he frequently takes from factories to put more tiles in the middle and group colors together. And so it reduces the number of turns that each player has, in addition to creating these larger groups of colors, which is another way that he like manipulates his opponents into having to make difficult choices and taking more negatives. So let's actually look at points gained with placed tiles. So Phosphate's at 57, Saprolot's at 56, Queen Dong 58, and nhass at 56 also. So not a huge difference there, but okay. So we're gonna look at two games, and I'm gonna quickly just open my recording to make sure that it's tracking the right thing. Looks like it is. So we're going to start with this game against Tio Perioso, who is or was 750 at the time. And when I recorded this video last night, I would kind of talk about the situation and what I think nhass might do. But what I have now is I actually have another copy of the game open on another monitor. And so this way I'm going to look at what nhass did and then talk about it. I mean, we'll still talk about the situation ahead of time, but this kind of gets around the limits of the replay viewer where it's hard to like go back and see what the situation was. So I'll let you know what nhass is going to do before we see it on the screen. So, and let me do the tile counts. And if you have not seen nhass play before, you are in for a bit of a treat. I don't think either of these games features like truly bizarre plays, but still stuff that's just not intuitive. And along those lines, like I've said this in other game or study sessions or game reviews before, but like I'm not going to pretend to know the logic behind these moves. I'm going to try to talk about what might make sense, but please feel free to comment with ideas that you have, or if you're a member of the Azul Discord, we can chat about these games in the Discord. And if you're not, I'll leave a link to the Discord in the video description. But anyway, I think all that to say, I think these are like, this stuff is worth chatting about because it's not easy to decipher what the logic was. So, okay, so we have a yellow heavy draw, yellow and black. And normally, like in yellow heavy draws, I like to populate upper row yellows. You don't really want to be building on the sides. And one thing that some of us have noticed about nhass is that he quite likes row 2 yellow in round 1, possibly just to secure like the centermost row 2 to increase his adjacency options in round 2. So, and then the other option, like you can play yellow, or most likely the other option is playing 2 black, either on row 4 or row 5 maybe. And something else I think I've kind of picked up on with nhass is that he likes to start populating row 4 more so than round 5, which makes sense from a vertical adjacency standpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and find out what he does. And so he's going to take these 2 yellow for row 2. So I think a lot of us in this situation would play on row 3 yellow, because you can basically guarantee yourself that you're going to get a row 3. But nhass just takes row 2 and is happy with that. So Tio takes the 2 black and plays them on row 4. And for nhass here, there's still pretty open options. He could still go for row 3 yellow, take the 2 yellow from the bottom left factory. He could secure the first player tile, but knowing him, that's probably not a high priority. Or he could start work on like row 4 or row 5. Again, I think, a lot of people's instincts might be to go for row 3 yellow and just secure row 3. But let's see what nhass does. So he actually does take the first player tile, but he does it with 1 white on row 4. And I think, I mentioned that I kind of picked up on him liking to get started on row 4 early. So Tio takes 1 black. And again, nhass has a lot of the same options. Wouldn't be surprising to just see him like take another white here, since he seems to be happy just working on row 4 and leaving row 3 for later. An interesting idea could be to take 1 black on row 5. And then if Tio takes the last black, you get the 4 yellow for your row 3, and you complete a row 3. So let's see what he does. Okay, so he does do that play, which is maybe why it was in my head. So he takes 1 black, and we'll see how Tio responds. Obviously, Tio can grab the 4 yellow and pass on row 4 black, which is what they do. And if I remember right, this becomes a very interesting situation. I think instinctually a lot of people would just take this black and prevent your opponent from finishing row 4. But nhass is going to do something different. He's going to take the 2 blue and play them on row 3. And it's kind of interesting because it puts Tio in this situation where like now Tio has to decide between finishing row 4 or letting nhass finish row 3. And so what nhass did by making this play first is basically just secure progress on row 3. Because if he takes 1 black, then Tio can take row 2 blue. And nhass gets nothing on his row 3. So he's willing to trade off row 3 blue for row 4 black. And in a way, like, he came out ahead, actually, because had he taken the black, he probably doesn't get any blue on row 3. Now, you can debate the prior turns and whether he should give his opponent row 4, row 3 yellow and all that, but in this situation, I think it's pretty interesting. I would never take 2 blue there. Just wouldn't even cross my mind. I would think to just block my opponent's row 4 black. So let's see what Tio does. Okay, so Tio takes the blue from nhass, and we are going to see another odd play, because you think at this point surely nhass will take the black, right? Like Tio is going to get one of these row 2s, so you might as well take the black, play it on row 5, and then you get whatever's left of probably the yellow. So Tio would probably take red on row 2, and then you get the yellow for your row 1, and you're in pretty good shape. But no, nhass is going to still leave the black out there and instead just take some progress on row 4 with the whites. And when I saw this last night, I thought it was crazy. And when I saw it just now, I thought it was crazy. And then I realized in both situations, last night and right now, that Tio cannot take the black because Tio has to take the reds. And so what looked kind of nuts with nhass just not defending his opponent's completion of row 4 was actually very calculated, and he put his opponent in a situation to not be able to finish the row 4 while picking up 4 tiles for himself. Had he taken the black earlier, maybe he has 1 blue and the 2 whites. It's possible, but he kind of maximized what he got out of the round, and he's going to prevent the black anyway. I don't think I need to tell you what's going to happen here. nhass is going to take the 1 black and play it on row 1, of course, and then Tio gets the white. I'm sorry, the yellow, and throws it away. Okay, so we are on to round 2. And let me do the tiles. Okay, so what do we have here? Kind of a nice draw for nhass's upper rows. There's a lot of red and blue, so he's got good row 2 adjacency options. Obviously, he's not going to finish row 5, but he should have good options for finishing row 4. And his opponent's kind of in this weird situation where they ended up building on the right side in their upper rows, but are building on the left side in their lower rows. So maybe worth just like taking a second and thinking about what you would play in this situation if you're nhass, and kind of maybe what your approach to the round would be. This is a situation where there's kind of like infinite options. nhass could play row 2 blue, row 2 red, take a single blue, take a single white. So there's a lot going on here. And one thing I also want to say is that I'm pretty sure nhass played exclusively real-time games. So what you're going to see in terms of like him potentially calculating multiple moves in advance is all real-time. This isn't turn-based where you can sit with it. So now this, for me in this round, like I would potentially play something, it's a little bit tricky to be honest. You don't necessarily want to like get a bunch of reds in the middle because your opponent wants row 5 red. So I'd think about maybe like taking 2 red on row 2, and there's 2 more single blues and 2 more single whites. So finishing out rows 3 and 4 shouldn't be a problem. The other idea is you could kind of leave your second row open because you have so much flexibility there, and instantly finish row 3 or row 4 maybe. But one thing that we've seen that nhass likes to do is just finish his row 2 instantly. Like even when he has flexibility, which I tend to think of as a benefit, he often just gets his row 2 out of the way pretty much right away. And I think we're going to see that here. Yeah. And so nhass takes the blue on row 2, which is interesting because he now has basically nowhere to play reds. Of course, he can play one on row 1, but this move like kind of invites his opponent to make a lot of progress on row 5, which I thought was fascinating. What it does do is allow nhass to take advantage of the 13 remaining reds in the future rounds. So, red is slightly more plentiful than blue. So in this way, he's like using, kind of like using his tiles optimally. If he had to choose between these two, you'd rather pick the one that's going to be more scarce and finish it now, since it's less likely you'd be able to finish it later. The other thing it does is, if nhass assumes he's going to finish row 3 and row 4 in this round, then he can start working on row 4 blue in the next round, which will be a nice adjacency play. And finally, the last thing this play does is it puts the 2 yellow in the center. And so if Tio wants to play his best adjacent row 2, he has to pay for it. And if he doesn't play it, then nhass has the opportunity to group it into a group of 3 later. Okay, so let's see what Tio does. So Tio instantly gets started on row 3 white, which creates this kind of interesting situation where nhass can potentially force some interactions here by taking one of the white tiles. And we can calculate how that would turn out. If nhass takes white and Tio takes white, then, I mean, there's so many options. Nhass could take blacks and try to force Tio to take the last black, and then take blues and be left with yellow or red up top. I don't think that's how it would play out, because then Tio would have no upper rows, so I'm sure it would go differently. So I don't necessarily want to like go down the real deep calculation routes for the sake of time, but I think what we maybe could expect to see is just securing the row 3 and potentially picking up the row 4 after, if Tio chooses to play on row 3. So let's see what nhass will do. So he is indeed going to secure the row 3, and it's going to be with this blue tile from this factory. These other 2 factories are exactly the same. So it's really, the question is like, does nhass have a preference for putting an extra red in the center, or for not putting a white in the center? And I can't really think of a good reason to be putting the extra red in the center, unless he wants to plan on like taking the larger group of reds later to play defense on row 5. So maybe that's what we'll see further down the line. Let's see what Tio does. Okay, so Tio takes a black, finishing that out. And so again, nhass is faced with this decision of whether or not to take the white and force the white interaction. If he were to take a white and Tio were to take a white, he could make a very big defensive play and play 5 reds on row 1. And then, Tio has probably row, I guess he would have to play row 1 yellow, leaving either blue or black for his row 2, at which point nhass would take the blacks. So forcing the white interaction seems pretty good for nhass here. Let's see what he does. Okay, so again, maybe I remembered this from having seen this game before, but if you guessed that nhass would take 3 red and throw them away, you would be correct. And what struck me as interesting about this play is that, again, he chose not to play them on row 1, which, like, red is his ideal adjacency play, both for his existing tiles and for the fact that he's going to place this row 3 blue and potentially a row 4 white. So, like, playing red is scoring him an extra 2 points in vertical adjacency, but opts to just throw them away, which I thought was fascinating. But again, it goes back to now he leaves red open for future defending. So he's going to be able to defend red with these top 2 rows in later rounds by not playing on it now. Okay, so Tio takes a white. And here, nhass can do a number of things. He can try to like force the last pick onto Tio and stick him with these 3 yellows, because nhass can't play these 3 yellows other than on row 1. But if he does that, then Tio's going to block his white. So I should have said that a little more clearly, but if nhass takes white, then he's going to end up with the last pick because there will be 4 colors. So he could do something like take 1 red, and then Tio would end up with the last pick. But then he won't get his white. So that's kind of the choice here. And again, like, to me, it seems like you take the white and you suffer the consequences of, you know, maybe having to play those yellows. You're already taking huge negatives. So, you know, it kind of doesn't even matter really. Like, if you assume you're going to get at least 1 or 2 more negatives, you're already at -8 maybe, and you're not even going to get to 8 points this round. You're only at 1. So I guess you could get there if you play red on row 1. But so let's see what nhass does. And again, if you predicted take 1 blue and play it on row 1, you're a mind reader. So I mean, it's to me, a crazy play. It's completely unadjacent. It's actually the furthest play from adjacency on row 1. You could have done this with red and still forced the yellows onto Tio. And you're giving up your row 4 white. And so let's set aside the choice of blue for now. And instead talk about why not take 1 white. And I have to think that the answer is that Tio is now very likely to take the white and play it on row 1, which leaves him with yellow and black for row 2, which means that nhass should have the opportunity to take this black on row 5. Tio is then basically has to take the yellow for row 2 and incur a negative. And then nhass gets to take these reds and dump more reds, preventing Tio from making any progress on row 5. So that's the argument for not taking the white, is that you're going to stop your opponent from getting any progress on row 5. They're going to overpay for their row 2, and they're going to play a non-adjacent row 1. So as much as nhass has played, you know, non-adjacently, like, Tio's going to play a slightly better situation, but still not great. Um, so I think that's probably the logic for not taking the white. Of course, Tio doesn't have to take it, but if Tio doesn't take it, like, you're kind of happy anyway. You've put yourself in somewhat of a win-win situation. Now, why play the blue instead of taking a red? I think the only thing I can come up with is that he wants to reserve these reds for future defense. He has managed to prevent his opponent potentially from getting any progress on reds, and he doesn't want to have to make awkward plays like row 3 red, with no adjacency, or row 4 red with no adjacency. So keeping these open lets him defend with adjacency in the future. So let's see what Tio does. Tio takes the white. And here, as discussed, we think nhass should go black to force Tio into the yellows, and then nhass can throw away the reds. And that is what happens. Tio takes the yellows, and let's see, nhass throws away the reds. So early in this round, you may remember that I said it was interesting that nhass took the row 2 blue because it basically gave his opponent free shot at row 5 red, and here we are at the end of the round, and nhass has all of the reds. They're not on the board, but he's got them all. So a pretty wild round, and as I mentioned, like, nhass clearly okay with ending the round at 0 points. In fact, that was probably borderline the goal. And whoops, didn't mean to click there. He's down by 4. Let me do the tiles real quick. Okay, so nhass is down by 4. Didn't complete row 4 in that round. Had ample opportunity, but opted to defend his opponent's row 5 instead. Probably a little bit of luck for nhass in this round. There were a lot of reds left, and only 3 came out. So that's pretty nice for him. His opponent's not going to be able to make progress on row 5. And because I clicked, we can already see that Tio is starting out with 3 black on row 3. Okay, so again, nhass in kind of a not similar situation to last round, but has opportunities for row 4. Has a decent shot at maybe row 3 yellow, can play row 2 red right off the bat, and has to watch out for these blues getting grouped up because he can't play blues anywhere. So I think the immediate question is, though, with the move that Tio made, is what is the plan for blacks? Certainly you can just take these 3 blacks and finish off your row 5 right away, and just call it good. There are only 5 blacks remaining, which is worth noting. So nhass needs 4 blacks to finish row 5 and row 2. So with only 5 remaining, he borderline has to get these 3 blacks. So, I think it makes a lot of sense to take them right off the bat. And that is what nhass is going to do, but he might surprise you by playing them on row 2. And again, the the logic here, from what I would be able to discern, is that he still wants to leave reds open. There's 10 reds left, and so he doesn't want to play row 2 red necessarily. He wants to leave that open for the future. And if he had played the black on row 5 and Tio takes 2 red, then nhass only has whites left on row 2. There would be a group of 2 whites in the center, so he could take them, but then his row 4 is in danger. So taking the black kind of gives him the most flexibility for the remainder of the round. He would have been kind of forced into some uncomfortable situations, maybe, if he had played them on row 5. Now, whether you want to debate if he should have taken 2 red there, I think that's probably a no. Like, Tio just comes back with row 2 black, and that's, a great play for him, nice adjacency. And then nhass needs 4 black with only 5 left, 6 if you count this one, has to end up taking this tile at some point, but again, Tio probably wants it, so I think this play makes sense, but I think it's still quite hard to pull the trigger on. Especially in a real-time game, that's pretty hard to think through. Okay, so Tio makes a pretty interesting play here and commits to row 2 white, trying to put pressure on nhass's row 4 and recognizing that he can play all of these blues on row 4. So this way he gets a row 2 and a row 4. If he were to have just played row 2 blue, even though it's better from an adjacency standpoint, he doesn't get this row 4 play. So again, nhass faced with the possibility of forcing Tio's hand. If nhass takes 1 white, then Tio basically has to take the last white. But what does that gain nhass? Well, it gets him row 3 yellow, actually, which is pretty nice. So that doesn't seem bad at all. But then Tio has the opportunity to take 1 black, for example, and group these 4 blues together and create their row 4 blue. So I don't think forcing the white situation is bad necessarily. I think it's probably what I would do in this case. But if you haven't guessed, nhass is going to do something different, which is to take this single blue and throw it away. And it's kind of a great play. It eliminates your opponent's ability to score row 4 blue. And it doesn't really cost you anything. nhass doesn't have any key tiles left to grab that he won't be able to grab after making this play. Whereas if he had taken a white and Tio takes a white, now it's harder to defend against this row 4 blue threat. So taking care of that now gives him all of the same options in his future plays, basically. Tio can't stop him from finishing white, and he'll be able to take a red or a yellow on row 1. So Tio takes a white. Let's not assume that nhass will just take a white. Other options could be taking 1 black, which is TO's not preferred row 1 necessarily, but certainly helps nhass and forces TO into not taking 1 yellow, but if TO takes the white, then nhass will probably take 3 red on row 1, and TO will have to take 3 yellow on row 1, incurring negatives and still not making progress on row 5 red. So I think those are the options basically. And let's see what nhass does. So nhass does take the black, but TO does not follow up with taking the white. TO takes the reds. So recognizing maybe that he really needs to start taking some reds, because otherwise nhass is going to get them on row 3 or row 1, and he's never going to get any. But this kind of leaves nhass in a weird situation, because if he takes 1 white for row 4, then TO just grabs the yellows for row 1, and nhass is stuck with these 3 blues. So he still cannot complete row 4 white, and instead has to manufacture this situation such that TO ends up with these blues. So he can't take like 1 white on row 1. He needs to create a group of 3 colors in the center. So that leaves him with 1 blue or 2 yellow. And you can probably, well, I spoke too soon. He doesn't have to take from the factory. He will take just the single yellow. And TO, what I missed there is TO is stuck. TO has to take the 2 yellow to finish row 1. So TO can't play the blue or white on row 1, and so has to take the yellow, and then nhass will scoop up the 1 white, which we will see play out. So again, like all these situations where it looks like, oh, I need that 1 white to finish my row 4, I have to grab it. nhass delayed twice. First, he took the 1 blue, then maybe even 3 times. First he took the 1 blue, then after TO took his white, nhass took the 2 black, and at that point TO had a choice between like taking the white or these reds, if I'm remembering it correctly. But he just like keeps focusing on what's making the situation awkward for his opponent instead of instantly jumping on what he needs. So of course we know how this will play out. nhass takes the white, and TO takes the 3 blues on row 4. Okay, so into round 4 we go. nhass is still down by 5. And we finally get some red tiles. And we also get not a lot of blue tiles. So sometimes it's hard to evaluate like games without being results oriented. For example, the expected number of blues in this round was 4. And we only got 2. And so this game might turn out very differently if there were 4 blues in this round, because this there only being 2 blue tiles really puts Tio in a pinch, where his row 2 and row 4 are in conflict. There's only 2 black as well, so he can't play. I mean, that was kind of expected. There were so few black left, but it's entirely possible that with a different round 4 draw, that nhass loses this game by a large margin. This draw is like borderline perfect. He's got 3 white open. He's got 3 yellow open. Tio can't play white or yellow, so nhass is guaranteed to be able to give him like 4 or 5 negatives this round. So I don't want to like, just because nhass is 1072 and seemingly an Azul prodigy, I don't want to say all of these plays are amazing and he's doing great, but I think like so far the logic has made sense. And this draw might be a little bit lucky and kind of seal the deal, but yeah, just worth putting out there. Like, if you think nhass screwed up some prior round or play, definitely don't feel like it has to be the case that he's always right. Okay, so Tio finishes out row 5. And yeah, nhass like doesn't have to, obviously still has to be alert here, but like this is a really great situation for him. I don't know how much nhass values having the first player tile in round 5. Historically, that's a pretty strong situation. And it's potentially even more strong because there's only 3 blacks left, and Tio is going to need at least 2 blacks. Maybe he gets 1. And so having control of round 5 and being able to take the blacks away from Tio is very strong. That assumes Tio doesn't get or doesn't need 2 blue, which he actually probably will. So maybe that's kind of a moot point. But anyway, certainly one option is to take the white on row 1 and secure the first player tile in round 5. He's got multiple row 2 options in white and red, so doesn't necessarily need to be rushed. Could just take a black tile here. There's a lot of options and it feels like everything is winning to me. So it almost like, it doesn't feel like he can really make a wrong choice. The thing I would maybe say is like, it's probably worth not grouping the 2 blues and letting your opponent get this, because if they can't get 2 blue and you take 1 black, then they can't get anything on row 2 this round. So honestly, a perfectly fine play might even just be to take 1 blue and throw it away from either the factory or the middle. Not saying it's the best, but it's probably still winning here just because just about anything is winning. So what does nhass do? A play that again, everything's winning, so it doesn't necessarily matter, but takes 1 red, puts it on row 1. Why this factory versus this factory? Possibly just wants to leave the whites ungrouped because he might need to play white on row 2. And so leaving these whites separated is generally good. But he still maintains his flexibility on row 2 and his flexibility on row 3. What he is going to do is give his opponent the opportunity to group these blues together or take one with the first player tile. And we'll see what Tio decides. Okay, so decides to group the 2 blue. And nhass can pretty much just straight up take these, and it's very strong. Leaves Tio in a situation of not finishing row 4 and not finishing row 2 because nhass will subsequently take blacks, at least one black for row 5. So taking 2 blue on row 4 seems really strong to me. But let's see what nhass does. Obviously doesn't take 2 blue, is just going to let his opponent get this play for some reason. So does secure the first player tile, but just finishes row 5, which I don't understand. To me, like, you take 2 blue away. I guess the only thing I can think of is if nhass takes 2 blue, and Tio I'm thinking there was a way for Tio to deny nhass the row 2 white. But it's not good for Tio. Like, Tio just can't play anything other than these blues. But yeah, if nhass had taken the blues, then Tio could either group the blacks or take one. And then if nhass wants to finish row 5 black, Tio could group all the whites together. But I don't know. I mean, this will work out fine. Like I said, I think pretty much everything is winning in this round, but pretty shocking to see him give this up. It also gives Tio a chance, a small chance, because nhass has the first player tile, but a chance to actually play blacks next round. And yeah, here, nhass, you don't even have to do any like tile calculations here, because the whites and the yellows are going to get grouped up, and you can play one of them and your opponent can play neither. So no matter what, they're going to take one big group, you're going to take one big group, but yours is going to score a bunch of points and theirs is going to go to the floor line. So I think just taking 2 white here is totally fine. And maybe for the first time all day, I have the right prediction. Tio takes 1 white because what else can he do? And nhass presumably will take the 3 white on row 3, leaving Tio with the 4 yellows to deal with. And this is just, Tio decides to play a red. I don't know that it matters. nhass plays this black, which, I mean, again, everything's winning here, so it probably doesn't matter that much, but kind of interesting with only 3 black left, and your opponent is gonna, your opponent's gonna get at least 1 most likely. And given that there's 6 blue left, like, this could be a valuable row 4 blue play. So a little surprised to see him play the black, but again, I don't think it matters that much. And nhass's 5-point deficit is going to turn into a massive lead. So now up by 10. I don't know that the round 5 stuff is that important. I would assume that nhass just takes 2 red on row 2 and end the game. But of course he doesn't. But again, everything's winning. But nhass just takes 1 black, so just denying his opponent scoring. And Tio takes the 2 red. nhass does have to end the game at some point with one white, and we'll do that on this play, and in doing so creates the group of 2 black and 2 red. So perhaps this is why the 1 black play earlier, because he knew his opponent would take 2 red, and then when he takes 1 white, he is forcing his opponent to choose between denying him and having to take negatives, whereas he can play the 2 black on row 4 for 6 points, or his opponent pays for their row 2 black, and nhass gets the 2 red anyway. So probably just a little bit of foresight there. And surely now nhass will take the 2 red, right? There's no other play you could possibly make other than 1 white on row 5. And the only thing I can think of here is that he's just messing with him. But maybe he's done the math, and what this play does is, if Tio takes the 2 red and throws them away, then nhass can force the 6 blue on him. So I guess that's, and you can see Tio's thinking, how do I not take the 6 blue? The only way is to play these whites. So he lands on that. And let me click through. And surely now nhass will take the reds, but doesn't, takes the 3 yellows, which again, maybe he's done the math here, but it's just like kind of hilarious to just never take those reds. Ends up taking -11, but Tio goes slightly lower and nhass wins by 5. I have to think taking the reds was, he's gonna win by, still wins by 5. I have to think taking the reds there was better. I didn't do the math on those negatives, but he could have played all those blues, so he wasn't at risk of taking any negatives. So pretty hilarious. I have another game, but I'm already at an hour, so that would be a really long video. So perhaps I'll call it here. And maybe I'll do the next one just in a separate video. Still release them at the same time if I continue to record tonight, but this way this video is not 2 hours long. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you haven't seen nhass before, welcome to his crazy world, and I'll see you next time.